We're here with Ginger Banks. Ginger, who are you? How do we find you?
Hi, my name is Ginger Banks. I have been a webcam model and most recently a sex workers' rights advocate for about 9 years. You can find me on Twitter at GingerBanks1.
So what does being a sex workers advocate entail?
There's two different things that affect sex workers negatively. It is the stigma that surrounds our industry and the criminalization that surrounds our industry. So there's a bunch of different ways in which I am an activist or an advocate. Most recently, I have hired a publicist that gets me interviews, and I spend most of my time talking about sex work, the stigma that surrounds it, how most of my focus is just on how sex workers are people just like, you and me, and we're just trying to provide for ourselves and our families. And that's something that for some reason a lot of people haven't heard. The other levels that I am trying to work on most recently is the criminalization that surrounds sex work, and that I've been trying to first attempt to network with judges and lawyers and other powerful people to see if I can get, open their minds and change their minds. I've been really inspired by, the abolitionist movement and, the queer movement, or I don't know what you would call it, but how homosexuals have definitely, the way we view them has changed so drastically in the past couple decades. And so I just try and see what they have done. And I think that, art is a very powerful thing when it comes to that. So that's something I've been trying to collaborate with other artists, writers, poets, stuff like that to see if they can be inspired by this, and then creating really cool art pieces that gets people thinking.
How can individual fans and supporters help you continue to engage with these politicians and judges and lawyers and other artists and activists?
The biggest positive impact all of you can have when it comes to sex work is to just try and politely get people to question the things that they say about sex workers. It's something that I know a lot of people don't want to have uncomfortable conversations, but I think that is where a lot of progress is made. And every time someone says something derogatory about sexual women, sex, or sex workers, I just think of it as a time or an opportunity to change someone's mind. And so, if one of you out there is brave enough to do it, when you hear somebody making jokes about strippers or dead hooker jokes, ask them, do you really think it's funny that sex work is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world? Because of the fact that, people know that if you murder a sex worker who works on the street, they are less likely to be investigated, or, unfortunately, the law tends to put more or less value on a person's life, which is really unfortunate, and it shouldn't be that way. And, sex workers' rights are trans rights. I mean, a lot of sex workers who do this to survive are transgender. I don't think people who are transgender just want to do sex work more, full service sex work more. So there's something else for us to look at there. I mean, we need to make this job as safe as possible for the people who do it. And that's what I'm working on every day of my life.
How can professionals in this industry make the environment safer for performers or for?
I think that we need to, I like to empower performers as much as I can, because the more power a performer has, the more they're gonna stand up for themselves, the more they're not gonna take anybody's shit, especially if you don't need that paycheck, when you go to set. That's why every performer should, I think, have different avenues of income so that they can turn down a paycheck when they're on set. It's you're gonna maybe put yourself in a more uncomfortable situation than you would like if it's something that you have to do, if you have to pay your rent. So I think it's, trying to teach performers to only do the things that they wanna do on camera, and giving them the power to do that.
Are there other parts of social justice movements that inspire you, and are you finding that you've got more leverage to contribute to the broader fight against poverty, or the broader fight to empower women because you've got a larger platform base? Bigger soapbox?
Learning more about sex work and the criminalization that surrounds it. Also how so much there's like so much of consensual sex work is conflated with sex trafficking, and that's something that doesn't help any sex worker or person who is trafficked. So I think that, you know, it's easier for people to just outlaw prostitution than it is to take a look at why people are trafficked and what causes trafficking, which is poverty, homelessness, LGBTQ rights, so many other things that, you know, it's just, there's a magnifying put on it when it comes to sex work, and there's so many different issues that intersect with the sex work issues, stigma, everything. And so, you know, I think it's a lot easier for people to say, oh, there's a mafia out there who's kidnapping girls and forcing them into sex work, but it's so much more complicated than that. People try and make things black and white because it's a lot easier to accept that idea than like, oh, maybe your friend is like pressuring their partner into a job that they don't want to, or a family member is pressuring their daughter or son into a job that they don't want to, because that's what sex trafficking is. It's not usually people like in a gang, and that's like, the media has a lot of problems with that. Just like, oh yeah, shipping containers full of girls. It's like, that's an easier thing to conceptualize than the complicated issue that trafficking is. And people, like, poverty is what puts people into the position when they do sex work when they don't want to. And that's like, I mean, people would rather just say no sex work than like, let's fix poverty, because it seems like such a huge problem that so many people have, you know, difficulty with, that, you know, I don't know, start going down like socialist mindset. But I mean, I don't know, I'm like more of a bleeding heart liberal, where I'm just like, or libertarian, where it's like, I just want social pressure on people to be as helpful as possible, and to like I think billionaire should be a slur. I say that on Twitter all the time. Like, I don't, like, why is there positive articles about people being billionaires being written? In my opinion, like, the more money I have, the more I just want to give it to artists and creators or people working hard and like making other people happy. So I don't know, we have a mindset shift that needs to happen in this country. I just think there's a lot of good that can come with like encouraging people to do the right thing instead of the wrong thing, and I don't think hoarding your wealth is a good thing.
Well, speaking of socialists, the most prominent Democratic socialist in the country is Senator Bernie Sanders. You made a video calling him out for his vote for FOSTA and SESTA. Did you get any official response from Bernie Sanders, or did you get much flack from his supporters or support? How did that go?
When I made the video to Bernie Sanders just talking about SESTA, FOSTA, and showing him that sex workers are just people, basically, I had a couple of articles written, and I had some people that worked with him or like worked on their team that would reach out to me privately to say that they liked the video. I never heard that he saw it. I never heard anything like that. But I mean, I probably picked the wrong person. Like, I could have made it, I should have made it just a broader issue. But I mean, that's why I need to work on the stigma in society and broader society first, because most politicians aren't going to support something until like the mainstream public has been polled and they finally are like, oh, I can finally support sex work decrim. So I need to work on individual people while also trying to like network politicians and stuff like that. So that's one of the reasons I stayed in Arizona, because there's so many people working on decrim in California and like so many different places in California, and no one's doing that in Arizona. So it's something I'm going to be working on.
Kristen Sinema was recently elected senator in Arizona, and she is the first open bisexual in Congress.
She also took some money from Backpage, I've seen in advertisements, so fingers crossed. The Backpage founders, well, the people who started Backpage actually also started a news organization called the Phoenix News Times, and they were very, you know, a very reputable journalistic like place, and they would always investigate the McCains, Cindy and John McCain. And so like sometimes when I think Backpage was being taken down, it was like more of a like, hey, don't fucking talk back to us politicians, we just want to control you. And Kamala Harris is like apparently going to be running for the presidency when she has fought against decrim in California for a really long time. She has tried to seize Backpage's assets, like until a Sacramento County judge said, no, it's unconstitutional. So she's like, well, let's just change the law. And so, you know, SESTA and FOSTA was passed, even though Backpage was seized for completely different reasons. Like, it's been such a bad impact in the sex work community, and they literally didn't ask one sex worker about it. And there's a saying in the sex work activist community, nothing about us without us, and people need to start taking that seriously, because sex workers know what they need. Other people have never been in that position. Why are we asking them about sex work if they've never been in that position? And why are we only talking to people who are trafficked if we're getting our opinions on this? You know, sex workers are obviously against trafficking because they're the ones who are going to be affected by it the most. And criminalizing it and pushing it into the corners and taking evidence away from it by shutting down Backpage makes no sense. I mean, Backpage has worked with countless law enforcement investigations when they actually come to them with evidence of trafficking. So for you to just take it offline, it's just stupid to think trafficking just disappeared overnight when Backpage was taken down.
All right, well, we understand you've got more interviews.
Yeah, I gotta go. Thank you for having me though. Yeah.